Hi, welcome to Accelerated Engineering. This is the workshop on a random name generator. I thought that a random name generator would be a good place to start building a nice little Lambda function that just spits out a random name whenever I want it to. It'll be part of a larger project that generates random pseudodata, and this is just a small part of it. This is my first, my first problem that I want to solve since the quadratic equation in Excel. If you've got a problem that you want to see solved, let me know in the comments, and I will take inspiration from that to solve some problems. So, the problem that we want to solve, or that we want to make, is we want a function that generates a random name. So I'm just going to write at the top here what the goal is. Our goal is to have an output of a randomly generated first name, last name pair. I think that for this one I'm going to have it output into a single cell. So the first thing that I'm going to need is a resource to draw from. I will need to have a whole bunch of names from which to randomly select. And you know what, maybe I'll, instead of saying randomly generated, I'll say randomly select a first name and last name pair. So where am I going to do that? Well, I've already generated lists of random names. So I'm going to name this sheet name list. And then what I've done is I pulled from ChatGPT and made it generate a whole long list of names and punted them into a CSV file. I'm just going to grab all of these values that I've already got, or that I've already copied out, and bring them into my name list. And before I forget, because I do want this to end up being in a table, I'm going to call this, call the columns in this one feminine, masculine, and surname. Those are the three categories of names that I've got, right now at least. Now, when I paste this in, oops, it didn't let me do that. Let's try again. Here are my surnames. I want to start with my feminine names. Where did they go? There we go. So Control C to select them all, Control V, and because they're horizontal and that doesn't help, I'm going to transpose on the paste, bring them all in a long list like that. Perfect. I'll do the same thing for my masculine names, and transpose, and then where did my surnames go? Take the surnames, do the exact same thing. There we go. That's all in place. Now again, all of these names have been randomly selected from ChatGPT. I had it generate a list of, I told it to target 1,000 names, both feminine, and then a list of masculine, and then a list of surnames, and this is what it spit out. So I don't know why it did some in alphabetical order and some not. It just did what it did. Either way, I would like to take all of these, and I'm using Control Shift and arrow keys to perform selections. I'll take all of them and insert this as a table, because tables are useful. My table does have headers. I've already named these. And this gives me a table. It is searchable, it is sortable, it's all kind of useful. Most importantly for my purposes, it is referenceable in a special way in a moment. But I've got my list. The other part that I'm going to do is in the name manager, I'm just going to edit the name of this table, and instead of having it named table 1, I'm going to call it table of names, and that should be good. That'll be useful later. Okay, back over to sheet number 1, which I'm going to call the generator sheet. Well, what do I need? Let's see if I can get one cell that just generates a random surname for the time being. The function that I'm going to use for this is the index function. That makes the most sense because it returns a value from a given array. And if I look at the tooltips for this, I've got an array and a row number, and that's what I'm going to use. So first thing is the array. Well, I already know that the array that I want to use is from table of names, and I want to use the column surname. So that part was easy. My index array is already done. Now for the row number, I want it to be random. Well, what kind of random do I want it to be? For this random number, I can actually take an existing function and say that I want a random number between, RANDBETWEEN. And RANDBETWEEN, that gives me a bottom number, a top number, or a low number and a high number. This index is going to go anywhere from 1, and then I don't actually know how many names I've got in this table. And more than that, if somebody adds names to my table, I want them to all be captured. So, I have different numbers of names in each column, and I want this to be usable for anything. So what I'm going to tell it to do is that the highest number it should be allowed to use, I'm going to say count how many cells are not empty in the table of names surname column. And just to clarify again, what this is going to do is it's going to count how many values there are, or how many non-empty cells there are in the table of names surname. So this is going to return a number, I don't know, say 307. And that's going to be the number of names I have in the table. I'm going to generate a random number somewhere between 1 and, say, 307. And my index function will return the name at that position in the table. Did I close all of my parentheses? One more. And that should just work. Let's find out. Look at that, we generated a name. Now, I am using a random function, and RANDBETWEEN is one of Excel's volatile functions. So every time I recalculate the sheet, I should get a new name. Perfect. That's working perfectly already. Okay, so the next thing I want is a, a given name. So for my given name, I'm going to do almost exactly the same thing. And in fact, I'm going to do so close to the same thing that I'll cut and paste this entire function and plop it right in here. The only thing I'm going to change is that instead of surname, I'm going to say that I want it to be the feminine names this time around. And I'll do the same. Oops. And again, walking through the logic, this function is going to count how many values there are in the table of names feminine column, generate a random number between 1 and that high number, and then take the value at the random number index location. So if I close it just like this, I should get a feminine name. Ernestine, Francisca, Dominique. Great, that looks like it's working. Okay, that didn't seem too hard. Oh, but wait, masculine names, I've got those too. And I don't want a masculine name and a feminine name. I want one or the other. So in order to do that, let's see. If I just change which which column it looks at, I'm going to have a problem because it won't, it'll give me an index number that's in the wrong range. And I could change both of them with an if function, toggling back and forth, maybe. maybe. But where this is going to be problematic is that if I want to use some sort of a trigger to toggle this back and forth between masculine and feminine, then I need something. You know what we can do though? I could use a switch function. So I'm going to start a new function underneath this one and say this is equals, equals switch. No, in order to use that, I guess I need a value. So we're going to make a let function here. This will allow me to keep some values in and out. So in my let function, I'm going to say that my first variable will be select masculine or feminine. And the value that I'm going to assign to it is if I generate a random number, and I'll use rand this time. And what rand does is it generates a random number using a linear distribution between 0 and 1, or properly between 0 and 0.9999, with, I'm pretty sure, 4 decimal places. So I'll use the rand function and say that if, oh, do I need an argument in there? No, I don't. It'll just go. If rand is less than or equal to 0.5, I'm going to make this masculine. And if it is greater than 0.5, then I'm going to have it return feminine. Okay, got that value assigned. Now I can take this, and now I'll use a switch function. My switch function will be on the select masculine or feminine. It's a true or it's either going to be masculine or feminine. So I'm going to say that if I get a value masculine, it's going to output a masculine name. And we're going to copy a formula in there again. Actually, no, we'll rewrite it. It's good practice. So we're going to take the index of the same table of names in the masculine row, and we're going to take for a row number a random number between 1 and the number of non-blank cells in that column. Okay, just check, did I close up all the parentheses? I didn't close up any of my parentheses. That closes count, that closes RANDBETWEEN, that closes index, and that should be good. Then for the other case, I'll just copy and paste because this will be quick and easy, and we'll change it around. If I get the value input feminine, I hope I'm spelling that correctly. Just occurred to me that I haven't actually checked the spelling of feminine, and I'm good at math and not so good at spelling. Feminine. There we go. Do that or that, and as a default, I'm going to have it return just empty in case something goes wrong. Now I need to close the switch function, which is great, and that is just what's going to output. I didn't assign this to a named variable, so this is the last calculation within the let function. If I hit enter, that gives me Yardley. Is Yardley a guy's name or a gal's name? Let's calculate. Russell, that's probably from the guys list. Nathaniel, Haven, Reagan, Winston. Well, I know Guinevere. Guinevere is a girl's name. So it looks like it's switching between the two. And it should give a male or masculine name about half the time and a feminine name about half the time. Great. That seems to be working just perfectly. Now, let's combine the two. The way that I'm going to combine the two, because this is working just fine and this is working just fine, is, I'll just slide that down. So I want to say that my big function is going to be equal to the first name and the last name. And the ampersand in this function is combining the text of both of these functions. And there will be a problem right away. Because when I combine it like this, oh, look at that. There is a space between the names, but if you look really carefully, there is a space before the name as well. And that's not quite what I want. So I'm going to tidy this up by using a trim function. Trim that value and trim that value, and that's just going to get rid of any spaces in the data. That gets rid of too many things, so I'm actually going to manually add a space back in. Yeah, I'm going to add a space back in. I was just thinking we could also do last name comma first name, but maybe we'll do that separately. There we go. That gives us a first name, last name combination. And if every time I recalculate the sheet, it gives me a new one. Fantastic. Now, I don't really want it to be calculated in all these cells separately. I want to have just one thing happen. The quick and dirty way of doing this is going to be to just copy and paste all of this text. And again, this is the quick and dirty way. Grab all of this, pop it in there. This is going to be a disaster. There we go. It's going to be a disaster, but it'll work. Perfect. And you'll notice that it's now generating a different name than the other randomly generated names. The reason it's doing that is because this one's calculating a random number over here, and this one's calculating other random numbers over here. Volatile functions are wonderful like that. And we'll keep it that way. Now, I'm not thrilled with how this is laid out. I'm just not thrilled with how this is laid out. So what I'd like to do is write one more let function using most of the same information. Actually, I want to write this as a lambda function, so I'm going to start the lambda function now. And we're just going to arrange the, we're going to just arrange it a little bit more nicely inside of the lambda function in order to make this work properly. And I don't need any inputs. This lambda function will just do its own thing as long as the table reference doesn't change. So first, oops, just escape out of that. I lost my work. Nuts. Okay, here's what we're going to do. So we want to keep all of this, the switch, the generation of the select masculine feminine, we're going to keep. And I want to take all of this, the selection of the surname, and keep that separate. So let's just cut these chunks out and put them over here. Keep all of that. Just so I can come back and get it later. We'll ignore the fact that it wants to word wrap. There we go. Do a little bit of resizing, and we're in good shape. Okay, let's get this all together then. Lambda, and no input arguments, so I have an empty set there. There's no arguments I need to put in, so we're just going to jump straight into the let function. And I will right away close my let function, or I will forget. Okay. So we're going to take, let's do the first part right away. We're going to say that surname is the part that we're interested in. And I'm going to take that. Nope. What's the matter? Oh, yeah, right. It won't let me close this unless I give it something to spit out. So I'm going to start by giving it a test value of 1 and telling it just spit out the test value. And if I put commas in all the right places, it should work. And no equal signs in the wrong places. Now it should work. Okay, just spits out 1. I need this formula that I already know generates a surname. I'll just drop it right in here. Bang. Done. Okay. Then I want to take all of this, and because I've already dealt with the spacing, I should be able to just copy this right in underneath that. Bang. I'll just make sure that the spacing is nice. And the spacing is really important if you want to keep these things human readable later. There we go. My switch function is all working. Throw a comma there where it's needed. And then my output is going to be oh, I need to assign this to a value. So I'm going to say this value is going to be given name. Yeah. So this is just taking the variable given name and assigning it either a masculine or a feminine given name based on what we did previously. Our output is then just going to be given name and surname. Now, remembering that we had problems with random spaces, I'm going to say that it's going to be a trim of these, and the trim function removes any extra spaces. And then, because I do want a space between, I'm going to add a space and just concatenate all of those things together. And at the last, we're going to make sure that output, the output value is what actually gets spit out. Let's see how that works. Well, that looks like it was working perfectly. Elia Walton, Albert Lowe, Odessa Wilkins, just all kinds of random names. Perfect. Well, that was successful beyond beyond my wildest dreams. Did exactly what I wanted it to do. Randomly select a first name and last name pair, and there it is. To close this up, let's turn this into a named function, one that we can call later. We'll just take all of this, Control C, pop into the name manager, take a new name, and we're going to call this function generate random name. And in here, take all the text of the Lambda function, and we're going to give it a comment that says generates a random first name and last name pair. Hit OK. And now we have this function. Now let's call it once, make sure that it's working the way that we want it to. Generate random name. No arguments needed, just does it. And we can repeat this multiple times and get a whole list of names. And the reason that I would want this is so that when I'm generating pseudodata, I don't have to worry about picking the names of people that I know accidentally. I can take these, Control C, Control V, and then just paste values. And now instead of it being changing and volatile, it gives me this static list of randomly generated names. And this is finished. So if that's finished, I'm just going to take this and pop all that over there. And now that I think about it, I probably should have kept at least one copy of the, I should have kept one copy of this in the Lambda text. It's always good to keep one of these tucked away somewhere in case you need it. I'm going to pop that over there. We'll take random name and put it over there. And then clear out the rest of this because we don't need it anymore. This tool is done. So that concludes this, this workshop. You don't have to worry about catching everything exactly because I'm going to make this spreadsheet available on a Google Drive location, link in the description below. And if you were interested in making this or making more functions that do similar things or any custom content, subscribe, comment, tell me what you're looking for, and I will do my best to generate it and put together some workshops. Anyway, thanks for listening.